There is a number that almost nobody in the XRP community is calculating correctly. It's not the price, it's not the supply, it's not the market cap. It's the gap. The silent, widening gap between what XRP is valued at today and what the infrastructure being built around it mathematically requires it to be worth tomorrow. Something strange is happening underneath this market. The headlines are loud, the price is quiet, and the structure is shifting in a direction that almost no one is willing to articulate out loud. Because if you say it plainly, it sounds absurd. And if you don't say it, you miss the entire story. So tonight, we are going to say it plainly. Market cap is a lie retail tells itself, and the institutions building on the XRP Ledger already know it. If you're interested in cryptocurrencies, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like the video. If you're interested in XRP, leave your opinion in the comments. Welcome back.
I am the calm analyst. On this channel, we don't trade in hype. We trade in structure. Today, we decode something that has been hiding in plain sight, the mathematical impossibility of XRP being valued the way it is, given what it is being asked to do. No predictions, no fantasies, just the architecture, the actors, and the arithmetic. Let's go under the surface. Let's start with the hard truth. 95% of retail investors evaluate XRP using a metric that was never designed for utility assets. They look at market cap, current price multiplied by circulating supply, and they compare that number to Bitcoin, to Ethereum, to whatever else is on the leaderboard. And then they conclude that XRP can't reach certain valuations because the resulting market cap would be too big. This is the foundational error. And until you understand why it's an error, nothing about XRP's behavior will make sense to you. Here is what retail is missing.
Market capitalization is a speculative metric. It measures how much money has flowed into a passive asset. It works reasonably well for store-of-value assets like Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's job is to sit still and be held. But XRP is not a store-of-value asset. XRP is a liquidity asset. Its job is not to sit. Its job is to move. And the relevant metric for a liquidity asset is not market cap. It is throughput. Throughput is the total value an asset can settle across its rails in a given period. And throughput, unlike market cap, has no theoretical ceiling tied to investor sentiment. It is tied to global commerce, institutional payment flows, tokenized real-world assets, and increasingly, autonomous machine-to-machine settlement. This is the mechanism David Schwartz has described in technical detail for years. This is why Brad Garlinghouse can discuss flows of $13 trillion passing through G Treasury without flinching. This is why Jake Claver and Versan Aljara keep returning to the same point. That the people anchored to market cap thinking are looking at the wrong instrument with the wrong ruler. You see, retail asks the question, how much money would have to flow into XRP for the price to reach X? That is the wrong question. The correct question is, how much value is going to flow through XRP, and what price does each token need to be at for that flow to be liquid, efficient, and non-disruptive to the network? Those two questions produce wildly different answers. And institutions are not asking the first one, they are only asking the second. Let's do the math that retail ignores. The global cross-border payments market is approximately $150 trillion annually. The foreign exchange market settles roughly $7.5 trillion every single day. The derivatives market is estimated at $1.2 quadrillion in notional value. And the tokenized real-world asset wave, which the XRP ledger is actively absorbing market share from, is projected to exceed several $1 trillion within this decade alone. Now consider XRP's supply structure. 100 billion tokens, fixed cap. roughly 55 to 57 billion currently circulating. Tokens are being burned with every transaction. Billions are still held in escrow with monthly releases largely relocked. And on-chain forensic firms like Glassnode and CryptoQuant have repeatedly flagged that liquid supply on exchanges continues to decline. Now layer in the bridge function. When XRP is used to source liquidity between currency pairs, what Ripple calls on-demand liquidity, the value being moved does not require an equivalent dollar amount of XRP to exist. It requires the price per token to be sufficient that institutional scale transfers don't cause catastrophic slippage. Here is the calculation institutions actually run. If a treasury manager needs to move $200 million from a US dollar position to a Mexican peso position, and XRP is priced at 50 cents, that transfer requires 400 million tokens to move through the corridor. That volume creates massive slippage. The price collapses on the way in and explodes on the way out. The bridge fails. But at $50 per token, the same transfer needs only 4 million tokens. At $500, 400,000. The higher the price per token, the smaller the footprint, the more efficient the bridge, the more capital the system can handle. This is not a moon boy fantasy. It is a design requirement. The bridge asset must scale in price as the network scales in throughput, or the bridge breaks. This isn't a prediction, it's a requirement. And here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. If XRP captures even a fraction of 1% of the markets it is engineered to bridge, the mathematics force a valuation that retail finds emotionally unacceptable. The math doesn't care about your emotions. The math doesn't care about your market cap comparisons. The math only cares about flow, slippage, and settlement integrity. If you have a problem with these numbers, you don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with the laws of liquidity. While retail is staring at red candles and arguing about market cap, the institutional signal has never been louder. Look at the moves. Ripple's acquisition of Hidden Road, a prime brokerage handling billions in daily institutional flow. Ripple's acquisition of G Treasury, the treasury management platform processing $13 trillion in annual payments for Fortune 500 companies, including American Airlines. These are not the moves of a company waiting to see if XRP will be relevant. These are the moves of a company building the rails before the freight arrives. Look at BlackRock. Look at Fidelity. Look at Franklin Templeton. Larry Fink has spent the past 2 years describing tokenization as the next major evolution of capital markets, and the institutional infrastructure being assembled, custody, settlement, compliance, is being built on rails that are compatible with the XRP ledger, not against it. Look at the central banks. The Bank of England has run proof-of-concept settlements involving Ripple infrastructure. The Bank of Japan continues its CBDC research with XRPL-aligned partners. Australia has tested settlement on the XRP ledger directly. The Federal Reserve, through quiet meetings dating back over a decade, has been aware of exactly what this network is designed to do. Ask yourself this brutal question. Does a trillion-dollar asset manager move without legal certainty? Does a central bank run live infrastructure tests on a network it considers irrelevant? Does Ripple spend hundreds of millions of dollars acquiring brokerages and treasury platforms if XRP is just a speculative token? The answer is no. This isn't retail FOMO. This is calculated positioning by entities that have read the regulatory tea leaves, signed the NDAs, and quietly built the on-ramps. They are not gambling. They are positioning. And while they position, the retail crowd argues about market cap. Now let's talk about timing. Because the asymmetry of this opportunity is not infinite. It has a closing window, and that window is defined by specific, identifiable catalysts. The Digital Asset Clarity Act is the final regulatory green light. Once codified, the structural uncertainty that has kept the largest pools of institutional capital on the sidelines simply evaporates. Pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, insurance reserves, the entities currently restricted from holding digital assets due to classification ambiguity become unrestricted overnight. Spot-a-pret flows have been quietly accumulating since approval, and the consecutive positive inflow days now mirror the early Bitcoin ETF trajectory, except with significantly less retail awareness driving it. Japan's Financial Services Agency continues to advance its reclassification framework, positioning REP within a regulatory tier that unlocks access for the largest institutional asset base in Asia. And then there is the macro layer. Federal Reserve liquidity dynamics, the IMF's ongoing discussions about settlement asset diversification, and the broader rewiring of post-dollar reserve infrastructure. These are not separate stories. They are converging on the same architecture. When these catalysts arrive, and they are not theoretical, they are scheduled, the wait-and-see capital becomes the all-in capital. The risk premium that has artificially suppressed price disappears, and the gap between current valuation and required valuation begins to close violently. We are moving from an era of abundance to an era of scarcity, and most people will not realize the transition has happened until it is already complete. Exchange reserves of XRP continue to drain. Tokens are migrating off public exchanges into institutional cold storage, into custodial multisig vaults, into structured products that will not return liquid supply to the open market for years, possibly decades. Once a token enters a regulated custody pipeline at the institutional tier, it does not come back out for a 10% profit. It is gone. The escrow releases that retail watches every month are largely an illusion. The vast majority is relocked, sold OTC to entities that immediately remove it from circulating supply, or absorbed into institutional treasury positions that are not seeking liquidity. The available float, the actual tokens reachable by retail investors, is significantly smaller than the headline circulating supply suggests. And here is the consequence almost nobody is articulating. When the regulatory gate opens and the institutional flood arrives, the retail market will be priced out of whole tokens. You will not be buying XRP. You will be buying drops, fractions of XRP measured in increments most people don't even know exist. 1 million drops per XRP. That is the unit institutions will hand to retail when this completes. The institutions have spent years engineering exactly this outcome. The volatility, the FUD, the regulatory drag, these were not bugs. They were the price of admission. The shakeout had to happen so that the accumulation could happen. The exit liquidity of the confused funds the entry of the informed. The door is closing. Not next year, not someday, now. I know watching this market is exhausting. I know the price action feels disconnected from every piece of fundamental evidence I have just laid out. I know the temptation to question whether the thesis is wrong, whether the patience has been wasted, whether the institutional story is just a comforting narrative. But as an analyst, I am trained to separate noise from signal, and the noise has never been louder while the signal has never been stronger. The red candles are not failure. They are accumulation. The FUD cycles are not danger. They are psychological warfare designed to transfer tokens from impatient hands to patient ones. The boredom you feel watching this market is the silence of a predator waiting for the precise moment to strike. Being early feels exactly like being wrong, right up until the moment reality catches up. And then it feels like having been the only person in the room who could see. The question is not whether the structure will activate. The structure is already activating. The question is whether you will still be holding when what looks impossible today becomes the new baseline tomorrow. If you're interested in cryptocurrencies, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like the video. If you're interested in XRP, leave your opinion in the comments. So here is the takeaway. Market cap is a metric for assets that sit. Throughput is the metric for assets that move. XRP was engineered to move. The institutions building on it are not asking what its market cap should be. They are asking what its price must become for the network to handle the flow they are about to send through it. Price is a distraction. Architecture is the reality. If you made it to the end of this analysis, you are no longer part of the crowd staring at the wrong number. You are part of the small group that understands what the institutions understand, that the entire framework retail uses to value this asset is the wrong framework, and that the correction of that framework is not a possibility, it is a mathematical certainty. Comment throughput below if you understood what we covered tonight. I want to see who actually grasped the mechanism, not just the conclusion. And if this kind of structural breakdown is what you came here for, subscribe, because the closer we get to the activation point, the more these distinctions will matter.